Welcome to everyone that's joining us. My name is Jennifer Scott. I'm the Director of Sport Burnaby, and my role is to bring sport events into Burnaby that have a social, sport, and economic benefit. So I work quite closely with our stakeholders, both our public and private venues, City of Burnaby, and hoteliers to ensure that, and Shawn and I will probably disagree on this, that Burnaby is the best place to host events. And so I've been in this role for about 5 or 6 years. And during that time, certainly keep an eye on best practices across the province, as well as what other cities, particularly in BC, are doing. And we have to give credit to Kamloops. They have done an excellent job of positioning themselves as one of the best sport hosting communities in the province. And as we're looking to reimagine what sport hosting looks like, in 2021, 2022, when we have a safe return to sport, in looking at how we can be adopting best practices going forward, I thought no one better than Kamloops to come in and share what they've been doing and share some of their secrets and what they've been doing to so they've been able to earn the moniker of Tournament Capital of Canada. So I've asked my colleague Shawn to come in and speak to that. So Shawn is a graduate of BCIT, and he began his career promoting tourism at the city of Kamloops in 1990, which also included sport tourism and the Tournament Capital program. When tourism services were no longer a city role, Shawn moved into recreation and taking the Tournament Capital program with him, working even closer with local sport organizations, supporting them as much as possible, with the ultimate objective of using their facilities to bring new events into town and be a successful sport hosting community. Shawn's team now includes 2 event coordinators who support dozens of sport and community events throughout the year. He provides direction to staff who are responsible for scheduling tournaments and league play in sport venues and parks. He also manages a variety of contracts and leases with local sport organization and third-party contractors. The most constant piece in Shawn's portfolio has been the Tournament Capital program. It has evolved into a program embraced by the community that affects thousands of participants and residents. And he feels it's rewarding to work with Kamloops sport and business community each day, offering new challenges. Shawn, over to you, and thank you for doing this.
Hey, great, Jen. Thanks for having me. As you mentioned, I'm a BCIT graduate, and the only other place I've lived besides Kamloops is in Burnaby. So when you reached out, I thought, hey, it's kind of a no-brainer. Happy to be back in Burnaby, even virtually. So thanks again. As you mentioned today, I'm going to be sharing some of our sport tourism best practices, not necessarily secrets, but there might be one of those that slips through in how Kamloops supports local sport and the hosting of events in the community. Our approach is unique, as you pointed out, and as a result, we have built that reputation across Canada regarding sport tourism hosting. We've been involved in the CSTA since its inception in 1999. However, that being said, we've been promoting sport tourism since 1985, and I believe sport tourism wasn't even a buzzword until 1999. So we've been at it quite a while. There's the TCC there, the Tournament Capital Center. It's a perfect example of build it and they will come. It's a building that houses our 50-meter pool, our indoor field house that has a 200-meter track and 3 hardwood courts, fitness gyms, and of course, Hillside Stadium track and field outdoors. It was part of the facility expansion project that began in 2003 and wrapped up in 2007. And I'll talk a bit about that later, but I just wanted to bring it to your attention and sort of show it off. It's been a very successful building in our community. It's changed in tents. It was originally supposed to be for event hosting and high-level training only, but it's become a real community recreation center used by all demographics. Here's a quick look at what I'd like to talk about today. Just sort of our org structure, down to the history, and down to looking to the future. So let's dive right in. As Jen mentioned, I've been working with the Tournament Capital program basically since 1990. In 99, I became the Tournament Capital Coordinator, and that was it. That's all we had for staffing in the Tournament Capital department. I did have support of all city staff, mayor and council. Me, the department had support to promote this Tournament Capital program. So it certainly wasn't me alone. but we had an opportunity to restructure and to realign some portfolios. And now, as you mentioned, I oversee some leases with services that support event hosting and just our facilities in general. And of course, my events team, which is now a tournament capital and special events coordinator, as well as a community events coordinator. And between the two of them, yeah, they're probably touching and being involved in about 150 events throughout the year. I think the history of the program is pretty interesting. In the 1970s, Kamloops was really suffering an identity crisis. They didn't know what they wanted to hang their hat on. We had annual events that focused on the history of the area. We have two rivers, of course, that meet here. So there was raft races, and it was called Overlanders Days. That lasted a little while. And then we went to Spoolmac Days, which was Kamloops spelled backwards, of course. And that was an amusement type fair that happened every year, including 4-H and agricultural. That also fizzled out. In 1979, we had the opportunity to host the first ever BC Winter Games. And that was the first time that the city really felt something was a real good fit. Event hosting, it brought the community together. Of course, it happened in the wintertime, so at a dreary time of year, it encouraged a bunch of tourism, drew some attention to Kamloops, and it was just such a feel-good event that it was the first time the city, as a community, decided this is what we want to do. The story goes on that in 1984, there was a group of individuals coming back from the Okanagan. They'd been at a racquetball tournament, and they were talking about how much money they had spent and how the facilities were good, maybe not as good as what they had here in Kamloops. The fact that Kamloops is also easy to get to, probably easier than most in the province. And one of them knew a city councilor at the time and sort of shared this idea that, geez, maybe we should try to host all tournaments here. And after a bunch of paperwork and council meetings, in June of 1985, Kamloops declared itself the tournament capital of British Columbia, and the program was born. Moving ahead to 1989, that's when the Canada Summer Games were awarded to Kamloops, and it was the first time a small community had been given the opportunity to host. And that's when the city realized we need to build some facilities. Which ended up being a very significant turning point for the project. But just to give you an example of some of the facilities that were built for 1993 Canada Games: our games pool, our 8-court tennis center, softball diamond, baseball diamond, Kamloops Rugby Club, the water ski and canoe and kayak facility at Shumway Lake, and an archery facility. And then, of course, there was some other minor improvements to other facilities. But of all those facilities, it's the archery facility that is the only one that isn't in existence anymore. All the others are operating at a very high level and are very well used. After the games, we had all these facilities that we needed to fill, and that's when it was, again, apparent that we needed to be a little more proactive in going after more events than we had ever held before, because we had all these facilities that we wanted to keep busy. We were successful in that, and the local sports responded favorably. In 2001, one of our counselors at the time said, we got to take this to the next level. And so that's when we bumped it from BC's tournament capital to Canada's tournament capital. And once again, facilities were at the forefront of being what was needed to move the program. So in 2003, a referendum was held after much planning and consulting with our local sport groups. What do you need? What do you want? How big does it have to be? What are the specs? What's needed to host the biggest event possible and best event possible for your sport? We involved about 15 sports, and in 2003, a referendum was passed by 53% only, approving the city to spend $37 million on new and improved facilities. The building went on for 3 or 4 years. 2007, we were fully open, and we've been investing ever since. And I dare to say our spending is probably closer to $100 million in the last 12 or 13 years. When we were opening the facilities of the facility expansion project, we wanted to open with a bang. So here's a list of some of the events that we opened our new facilities with. North American short track speed skating at our Olympic ice. We hosted international soccer at Hillside Stadium between Canada and Mexico. We hosted an international Fed Cup tennis match between Canada and Israel, right here in the field house, actually, before we even put down the hardwood courts or the track. Some other events there: 2010 World Masters Athletics, 1,400 athletes from over 62 countries, national gymnastics, 1,000 athletes, all under one roof. And I understand that that's the first time that gymnastics had been able to hold all three disciplines under one roof. So a real hats off to the field house. Of course, the BC Lions training camp has been here for the last 10 years. We hosted Women's Worlds Hockey in 2016, which utilized our Sandman as well as our new Olympic ice. Well, it wasn't new at that point, but if we didn't have it, we wouldn't have brought that event in. And the Fieldhouse also allows us opportunity to host banquets of up to 3,600 people. I indicate there we had a fancy linen luncheon for 1,250 during Hockey Day, but during the 2013 BC Seniors Games, we had a dinner and dance for all 3,600 participants underneath the Fieldhouse roof. So how is it successful and why? Well, it's really become a way of life. The local sport organizations have bought in, they see the benefit, and they are keen to work with us, and they're constantly coming to us saying, hey, we'd really like to host the blank, anywhere from provincials to Western Canadians to nationals. And of course, we wouldn't host those single sport events without their support. So that communication and relationship is really important. We now have the facilities for the most part, and they're ready to go. There's very little renovation or improvements to be made to any event that is going to consider Kamloops. As mentioned previously, we have full support from Mayor and Council, all senior management, and of course all of their staffing teams, from streets to signs to carpentry to whatever we need. We've got the ability to do what we have to do. Ownership has its privileges. The city owns the buildings, we own the program, and that allows us to work with the groups that are impacted. As an example, when international hockey came to Kamloops, that had a big impact on 2 sheets of our ice for the better part of 8 days. We have the ability of working with our minor hockey association to make it right, whatever that looks like. And they're always open to it because it's bringing in a higher level competition of the sport that they're trying to promote as well. We make hosting easy. We've established an event headquarters at the Kamloops Sports Council office. We've provided the Sports Council with a fully functional office, as well as an operating grant. And the most important piece there is whenever we're bidding on an event, in our bid, we're able to say, we have an administration office ready to go. You give us the green light and we'll give you an address and a phone number, and we'll have people answering the phones with all their inquiries pertaining to that event. Hosting events inspires us to improve our facilities. When a group comes to me and suggests that they need to improve the track or a field of some kind, my first response is, well, geez, what can we bring to that improved facility? Because if you tell us we're bringing Western Canadians in, we'd certainly be more willing to find some funds to invest in that facility. And then when we're not hosting those events, our facilities are available to be booked by residents for league and recreational play. And finally, we have the partnerships, which is pretty important. It is a city program, but we couldn't do it without our key community partners, those being the Kamloops Sports Council that I mentioned earlier. They support us in volunteer management, administrative support, as I mentioned. They sit on the boards of many of these major events that come to town. They provide meeting space. They manage and maintain the event kit that we've provided to them as a revenue generator, so that helps to pay some of their bills. And they do books for some of their sport groups as well. So they're earning some revenues to pay their bills and to pay their staff. We support them with a building and a grant, and by involving them in all of our event hosting opportunities. Tourism Kamloops is a big partner. Obviously they provide the pre and post tourism opportunities for the event. The stuff that's outside of the field of play is as important, we're finding, in bidding on events. It's not just about the game anymore. It's about what does a community offer to people who are coming to town. And they've got a great social media network that we take advantage of as much as we can. As a municipality, we don't have that so much there. And then, of course, the supporting organizations, typical for any community, the local government reps, the Kamloops Tishwapnik, the school district, et cetera, and the business communities for their sponsorship. And the sports. We can't do it without the sports, who we are, constantly working on our relationship with not just our local sports or our Pacific sport organizations, but with the national sport organizations. So what does our support involve? Well, right off the top, we give tournament capital hosting grants to any event that has out-of-town participants. We have a couple of different categories, but basically we provide grants that are anywhere from $100 to $1,500, depending on the size and scope of event. The higher level event usually generates the most money, but also an event that brings 1,000 people into town, for example, is going to get our maximum $1,500 grant. We provide our staff resources at the table to meet with the local sports to figure out what they need, and then we work through that with them. And they'll also be on the committee to provide that city liaison support between the host committee and the city. Improving and investing in our facilities that I've touched on. Our city staff out in the parks and in our arenas, their attitude has changed over like crazy. It's their service with a smile. It's a total can-do attitude, and we're often hearing that feedback from not just the local organizers, but from the people who attend. We provide event sponsorship when necessary, often and more often to get lift off of an event that is just starting. And then after that, it's based on need. So we'll consider sponsoring any event that we think is good for the community, good for the program, good for sport, and support them that way. We promote a program to the residents of Kamloops as well as the visitors. We've created a billboard program where we have 6 billboards throughout town in high visible locations that promote upcoming events, community events, sporting events that are city sponsored and that we have a big part to play in. And we have a special events and bids budget, which we're given every year, and that allows us to work on bids, to bid production, to support major events that are coming to town with that little bit of extra sponsorship, maybe, or maybe an extra something special that they need to make their event great. And the nice thing about that budget is what is not spent at the end of the year, we're able to put into a reserve fund and keep for future events. As Jennifer knows, some event bids come with a pretty hefty, either a bidding fee or a hosting fee. And this way, by having some money in the bank, we don't need to go to our council every time to ask for that money. We've got it in our operating budget. And the bottom line of what we do is we're just trying to support local organizing committees to host the best events possible. Just some quick numbers from 2019. We had something to do with 108 events. We had 32,000 out of town participants, which resulted in over 104,000 participant days, and our calculation of $14 million in direct spending. That's not scientific by any means. That simply calculates the number of people times the number of days times a very humble average daily expenditure. And what that does, I think this is kind of interesting, it allows us to compare year after year. So instead of telling council that we had 32,000 people here for 3.2 days, we put a dollar figure to it, and And if the dollar figure is up, then it means our numbers were up. If the dollar figure is down, then our numbers are down. Looking to the future, we're going to continue to support the development of our local sport organizations, help them do what they do best. Try to make it as easy as possible for them to run their leagues in our facilities. Encourage them to create homegrown events. Continue to build our relationships with the provincial sport bodies, the national sport bodies. Events and training programs. It doesn't just need to be an event. A training program is also valuable and draws great attention to the city. We want to continue to make the best use of our facilities. We're promoting sport and cultural events, not just sport. We're trying to broaden our horizons and performing arts, those kinds of things, and to continue with the developing the volunteer base. Just a few final thoughts. What does Canada's Tournament Capital mean? It doesn't mean that we're going to host the biggest or the most, but we want to host the best tournaments, and we want to work with our local sport groups. Communicate with your user groups. Keep that communication going between all parties so everybody knows what everybody's doing. Be aware of the capacity of your community. We're pretty strategic in bringing in major events to the community. We don't want to burn out any volunteers or drain any resources. Making sure all the partners are at the table that need to be at the table and keep them involved. Always exceed expectations. One of the things that we're most proud of is the variety of events and how the Tournament Capital has been embraced by our citizens. And finally, we're looking forward to the Tournament Capital program being a big contributor to us and our recovery here after the negative effects of COVID. And I'm happy to say that last weekend we had our first athletics throws meet. It had 8 or 9 competitors. There was no spectators welcome. It was 2 days. I think each day was 2 or 3 hours. But you know what? It was the first event, and we're looking forward to many. So back to you, Jen.
Terrific. Thank you. Thank you for that. Now, if there's anyone wants to ask any questions, please put it in the chat on the side and we'll pick it up there. But I had a question off the top. Thanks for the history of how you guys went to Canada's Tournament Capital, like the process behind that. And knowing that is a bold and ambitious position to take, how has that motto helped generate community support and the necessary buy-in for the initiative?
Well, it's on all of our vehicles. It's on all of our signs. It's everywhere, and the community has just bought in. I think it paves the way for again, for some of these national sport organizations. I think they're all familiar with the motto, and so it's a door opener. It's a conversation starter with them. So it's helped in that regard. Sometimes I think it might be too bold, too strong, and could even overtake some event messaging and marketing themselves. But for the most part, it's a pretty friendly motto. It's environmentally friendly. It's worked really well for us.
Terrific. And lastly, we know and we feel in Burnaby that displacement is the perennial issue. How do you find that balance between your local sport organizations and sport hosting needs? Like how do you determine those priorities?
Yeah, and I do work with the staff that are bumping groups in order to schedule in tournaments. They've been doing it and expecting it for so long that they're used to it now. And again, when we bump our soccer groups, for example, to host a provincial or a national soccer event, it's promoting their sport, and so they're happy about that. It gives their participants and their members an opportunity to see a higher level of sport, but they also know that we're going to do the same for them when they want to bring an event to town. So, we're fortunate in Kamloops that we've got, a number of facilities that we can relocate people to. It might not be the best facilities that they're playing on normally, because we're going to use those for our tournament hosting. But we've got many opportunities on where to move soccer or baseball or softball when those events come to town.
Oh, that's terrific.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we've hit our time. So I personally, Shawn, thank you very much for walking us through that, for sharing what your best practices have been. I think there's a lot that Burnaby could look to, as well as other communities across the province. So thank you for your time and sharing your expertise.
My pleasure. Any questions from anybody, feel free to reach out directly.